Join us today on Beyond the Lair, where we have a conversation with Josh Nilson from Maskwa Investments. He's going to talk about his journey with technology to becoming a CEO of one of the largest gaming companies and how tech can advance marginalized communities and make a difference in so many lives. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Beyond the Lair. My name is Gina Jackson Montgomery. I'd like to introduce my co-host.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dean Montgomery.
And we are thrilled today. We have a special friend and a guest, Joshua Nilson. Joshua is a Metis from Willow River, BC. He is the founder of Maskwa Investments, which focuses on early stage seed funding for advisement with a focus on Indigenous tech businesses. Prior to that, he was a founder at Eastside Games, ESG, making mobile games like Trailer Park Boys, The Office, RuPaul Drag Race, Superstar, and more. ESG went public in 2021. Josh has been working in the tech since 2002 and was recognized as one of the most influential business leaders in the province as part of the BC 500 in 2021, 2022, and 2023. Just recently, Josh was named Person of the Year 2022 at the BC Technology Impact Awards and included in the Hall of Fame. Welcome to our programming, Joshua.
Thanks for having me.
Let's dive into, you're such an interesting person, and to be included in the Hall of Fame at this age and stage of your life. Maybe we can tell our viewers about you, where you grew up, how old you are to get a Hall of Fame and to accomplish so much that you've been in.
I am 50 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
And for our viewers, he looks like he's 30 years old. So
The dress is cool.
Yes, and dress is cool.
Maybe we'll start. What about at the panel last week where you met?
Oh, yes. Josh and I met at the panel at the Canadian Council for Aboriginal 40th anniversary. We were talking about Indigenous in the Indigenous entertainment business in all different levels. And of course, we have a TV show, we have a podcast, we do kids camps all over Canada, but you represented the tech portion of that. And I thought it was a really interesting panel, and it was so nice to meet you. And Dean had the pleasure of going out and spending some time with you after that panel. So we can talk about that, but that's how we met and thought you'd make a great guest on the podcast. So let's hear about you, 50-year-old icon.
I never thought I would hear those words. But yeah, I'm from a really small town in northern BC called Willow River, BC. It's about 30 miles outside of Prince George, depending on how fast you drive. If my mom's driving, probably more like 20, 25, I'd say. And yeah, I grew up super country, riding my motorbike on the street, camping all the time, outside, playing fastball, lived right next to the ball diamond. So that was kind of my life, living up north in the bush, and then went to school. And, I grew up in the 80s, and we were the first sort of generation to have video games. So had all the consoles. And my mom bought me a television, and my dad got me a Texas Instrument computer that you plug into the TV with like things like this that you plug in the back.
Yeah.
And you have to use the butter knife to make sure it's on and off and stuff like that.
I had a TRS-80. That's my first.
Oh yeah, that's right. We talked about that.
Yeah.
And back in the day, you'd have those TVs where you have the big wooden TV, but after a while, you don't get rid of it. You just put the newer TV on top of it, maybe a doily or something. It just becomes like a TV statue in there.
It's a stand.
It's a stand. That becomes a video game TV. So I just thought I would always be creative and work in games or do something in games because I loved playing games. I loved telling stories. I loved playing D&D. My mom's Wiccan as well. So she as soon as she heard that they didn't want kids to play D&D, she went out and bought us a D&D set, and that'll show them. And so we played D&D at my house. And
that's Dungeons and Dragons, for those that don't know that, right?
And your mom's what's Wiccan?
Like a witch.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, like kind of grew up in an untraditional background with hippie parents, and I was really fortunate to just have the freedom of growing up kind of in the small town wilderness, and it was really great. Then we went to school. I always tell the story that you're in grade 10, you're sitting in gym class, wearing your gym strip, which you're probably at your most vulnerable as a teenager. And they're like, and now we're going to pick a career that we're going to do. So where are you going to go to university? What are you going to do? And I hadn't really thought of it, but I said I wanted to make games. And they said, well, you have to go to university. I'm like, well, I'm not going to go to university. So they kind of put me in this other section where they talked about you could work in culinary, you could work in forestry, you could work in the mill, you could work for the railroad, you can do get training.
Yeah.
And I picked culinary because I thought it would be a great way that you could see the world. And I always wanted to work in the kitchen, but I also thought if I'm living on my own, I can always eat for free. And it's true. And
Smart.
And eat well for free.
yeah. And you did well. So I ended up not even thinking about games and going out and working at a bunch of I worked for a big hotel chain. It's based in BC and Alberta, and opened up a whole bunch of hotels and got to go around Western Canada and do that. And then kind of right before the year 2000, and I grabbed a pamphlet while I was in Whistler, and it said, you should work in information technology. It's the way of the future. So I was like, I should do this, because if you make websites, you're going to be able to make a business from it or do something. So after years of working in hotels in the kitchen, I went back as an adult student to Cap College, which is now university. So I can say I went to university, I guess.
Yeah.
And
you were almost 30 by that time.
Yeah, I was old.
Yeah.
Yeah. Went back and did that program, and I think I was okay at everything, but what I found I was really good at was actually getting business and being a good project manager, and saying yes to everything that our group could do, which really stressed out our group. Because they said, can you do this for us? Oh yeah, we can get that done. Can you do this? Oh yeah, we can get that done. So early on, I was a CEO, just going off and saying, yeah, we can do whatever we can, and coming back to our team, and people are like, what are you doing? We don't have the resources to do that. It's like, you'll figure it out. I'm going to go get more work.
Yeah.
And so I did that for years, and I did that in 1 year for that program. And then 9/11 happened. There's a big crash, and nobody was hiring. So I ended up just going and working at various tech companies. And then through networking, creating relationships, I was able to get my foot in the door and be an IT person at Relic Entertainment, and started making video games. And I've been in games for 15 years, been in games ever since. Maybe it's 16 years, something like that. Been in tech 20 years now.
So were you coding? What were you doing when you're making video games? Can you say that?
So I would say the lesson learned there is just say yes and be confident, but I had no idea what I was doing. That I can do some front end coding.
Yeah.
And my diploma was IT, and there was an IT department. So when they asked me in the interview, so do you have qualifications for IT? I said, well, I do have an IT diploma. And they're like, well, that's pretty good. They're like, can you fix computers? And I'll be like, yeah, I think I can, but I really couldn't.
So when did you walk away from there? And did you move? Like, you just started ESG, said one day, hey, I'm going to start making my own games, or how did that work? ESG.
We just bought our first home.
Yeah.
We put down a down payment, and it was right at the cusp before real estate went crazy. You could put down 0% or something like that in order to acquire a place. We acquired a place right at the entrance to Chinatown in Vancouver. We were walking to work one day, and my wife said to me, why don't we quit our jobs and backpack around the world? And by the time I got to my desk at Relic, I was like, yeah, it sounds pretty good.
You're going to say that to me sometime, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Let's leave right now and backpack around the world. Wow, that's crazy. So how did you have the opportunity to do that? Obviously, you had some savings to be able to go and do that. And how did this come about? And whereabouts where did you start, and how long were you gone for?
Yeah, our plan was to do 16 countries, 3 continents, and 6 months. And that got cut a little bit short because of really bad food poisoning and just getting homesick after a while. We had a bit of savings because my wife at the time was working for an amazing advertising agency, and loving it, and just decided we needed a change. We didn't have a kid yet, so we're like, let's do it. So when we came back after learning all of that, and remember, this is traveling before iPhones. It was like pulling out the Lonely Planet book and trying to follow a map in Thailand.
The Let's Go books. Let's go to Europe. Let's go to Thailand.
Totally.
Yeah.
On a budget, always on a budget. We had a really strict budget too. It was like now when we travel, I think that really helped me in business travel and thinking about that, because I can survive on, $5-10 a meal trying to figure it out. And then you have a bigger dinner or a different strategy like that. You can kind of figure it out.
It never leaves you though, does it?
No.
Doesn't I still think like that as well.
I think it's so important to travel. We, Dean and I teach kids camps all over Canada. And one of our lead sponsors is International Experience Canada. And what that does is it provides youth 18 to 35 years old the opportunity to go work in a different country out of 36 different countries for 6 months. And it's not the same, of course, today where you just put on your backpack, have your book, or even have your iPhone and just go without people worrying about it and without risks and concerns. What do you think? How does it change you when you travel? What is your outlook on the world when you come back? Is it different? For you especially, but maybe can you talk about traveling for young people as well to get a perspective of who they are and what they want to be?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's the best investment you can do. Maybe education is the best. Maybe this is the second best investment you can do, to really see other cultures and learn from other people and get out of your safe space that you've created, to get uncomfortable and to not have everything where you think it should be, and to be confused, and to also know that this is, a big country we live in. And also, just the one thing I love traveling with my daughter is going around, and we travel and we usually pick a location to learn about cultures and learn that there are Indigenous people everywhere, and colonization's affected the entire world. And you can see this, and you can learn from the deep learnings that you can get that go outside of sort of when you're doing more commercial travel, where you're buying a package and going to a resort or whatever and not leaving the resort. I think in that travel around the world, it's now shown that there's more to do than just that. And especially with the resources we have, you can take walking tours in any city that you go to, or you can just explore and see where the locals go. Mm-hmm. Working in the kitchen, I think, really cemented that just through food and learning about different cultures and what people eat and how they talk. But relationships are the same wherever you go. If you're going to work as an entrepreneur, mm-hmm. you really have to foster those relationships and get okay with being comfortable in other people's surroundings, because that's their home, that's where they live. And you have to be comfortable in that. You can't expect to travel around the world and have the same things that you have in the place where you live.
Yeah. Gina and I always talk about our experiences growing up or being younger and traveling. And we always say it's probably the best early education that we got. And and that's what brought on Youth Experience Canada.
Yeah.
Incredible. So then you get back, you're healthy, you have your food poisoning, you're okay. And you start thinking, what am I going to do? Is that what happens with ESG or?
Yeah, I came back and started looking for a job and applying for jobs and not really liking anything that I wanted to do. And saw a small startup company. I applied there. They hired me. And, through a series of events, it ended up folding, and we ended up creating new games on a new platform, which was Facebook at the time. And so we were making games that nobody really was catering to that market, really looking for a new market. So we were making games for casual game players, for women that played games, for people that were playing games outside of the typical of what you think would be a gamer, which would be, maybe a first-person shooter or an RTS or a very male 18 to 35 gamer demographic. We would really want to challenge that early on and change what a gamer was. Because our theory, and what I still talk about, is every single person's a gamer. And the elements that when you make interactive media, if you looked at your phone today and you didn't use some of the included apps in your phone or email, make a call or text, you're using one of the elements of an app that's kind of based on that interactive media game mentality. So it's a huge market.
Can you run us through, so in respect of making video games, whether it be coding at the very beginning, with like how AI has shifted that, whether it's impacted the technology of making games for kids. We have four boys, 18, 21, and 12 and 13 years old. And of course, the 12 and 13-year-olds are on the games nonstop. So I know that the older one is interested in something like this. Can you run us through when you first started making games and how that has changed now?
Yeah, it's a great question. Some companies are at the forefront of that, but there's still the majority of companies that are making games sort of the old-fashioned way. So they're making games, but the tools they have might be powered by AI or new technologies, which are pretty amazing, which is my daughter has some learning disabilities, but she's being dyslexic, having a hard time sort of, being able to type out and do code, but there's so much drag and drop or no code, or they call it low code to build stuff. AI is helping with a lot of that to make it easier to build games. Just think in technology at one point, all websites had to be hand coded, and now it's no longer the case. Most technology was, even with what we do to video editing, it's given us better tools to create faster as creators. So I think with AI, a lot of the tools that are coming along are just helping us create more interesting, robust areas, but there's going to be certain elements of that, your art, your narrative, your core loop that you're making for your game, that are still coming from people and being very unique, interesting aspects.
Mm-hmm.
We've been a sponsor when I worked at Eastside Games for, I think it was 3 years at Imaginative, and looking at their in-digital games that they're making, what these people can make in 2-3 days in the land jams, or what they make and they submit to be at that gallery at the side of the film festival, is just remarkable. Studio level quality on really deep, rich subjects that bring people into different worlds and are able to learn. I think games are one of the most immersive things that you could really learn about an aspect you don't know about and leave with a different feeling or thought or challenge to you.
So then, okay, so let's get back to go. You said you don't code. You didn't then, or you don't still to this day. You're using these. You're a leader now, CEO. But how did you get into ESG? Did you hire some guys? Did you have some friends that said, "Let's do this," or how did that go?
Yeah, I started as the studio manager, which just basically means you do whatever needs to be done. And a lot of the business development. There's a lot of. We think about working. If you're thinking about working in games, there is a lot of that core team you need, which is artist, designer, software engineer, QA. But there's a whole bunch of other roles that exist in every single business I've ever been a part of, which is you need somebody that's going to go out and get the contracts, that's going to maintain the relationships to make sure that you can distribute your games, marketing and sales. So I kind of took on all those and hired a team up so we can continue to publish and make strategic partnerships with other developers that were making good games, so we can get games on Facebook. And then we can make sure when mobile came around that we're able to do mobile games. So I ran his operations for a long time, and the CEO at the time was the person that put the most amount of money in and mentored me into becoming CEO. And I was CEO of Eastside Games until we went public. And we made a lot of games. We have some of the biggest IPs in the world when we were there. It was amazing. This little studio was able to get everything from our first licensed IP game was Trailer Park Boys. And then we got It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. We got RuPaul Drag Race Superstar. We got Star Trek Lower Decks. We got The Office, which is probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest IP in the world. And they're still launching a whole bunch of new licensed IP and original IP games, but more around the strategy of working with people, with other good studios, and publishing, creating some within ourselves. And I did that. And we were talking at lunch. I'm like, it's weird. It feels like it was forever, but it also I'm starting to forget details about the time. I can't believe it was like 14 years.
Incredible. So where did you go from there? When did the IPO happen?
Right in the pandemic.
Yeah.
So I got ripped off and had to ring the digital bell on the TSX, which was kind of lame, but a big accomplishment for the team.
Yeah.
And from that, I took over as a GM of studios, and I managed our other studios. We had strategic partnerships, talking with our good friends at Apple and Google all the time, and also led up the studios DE&I efforts, and some of those programs we did, some really cool stuff.
What are DE and I for our listeners?
Yeah, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Okay.
So working on some of that and some of our philanthropy stuff. Are there the co-founders of Eastside Games, Galen and Jason? They were always like, we need to do this, figure out how to do it. And I kind of always had a blank check to do that. So I think we were one of the first game studios that were able to kind of push the envelope and make good ideas. That I think when you can do something that other people copy you and then claim it as their own idea, but it's a good thing, that's an amazing thing you could do for the industry, because then they feel really good about it, and then they're going to do stuff, and then people are going to copy them there. And I probably do it too. Well, I know I do it. So it just makes the industry a lot better. Like our industry, you got to remember, is mainly men. It's a bro club traditionally in games, and it's improved a lot, but it still needs a lot to be improving. Like, for example, when we were working with DigiBC to talk about this problem, we're talking about there's no Indigenous people in interactive entertainment. There is less than 1%, 0.7%. And in leadership, half that. And in CEOs, half that. So we're dealing with less than 1% in this vertical. And the challenge that it was people didn't feel comfortable in this industry identifying as Indigenous. So DigiBC worked with a bunch of studios, and we did a bunch of surveys to talk about that. And we got that number up. Now I think it's 1.6%, which still sucks, but it does tell you that there's a lot of work to be done there, and we continue to work at it. So being able to add some small things that are really impactful in the industry, working along with my colleagues, were really good. Like, for example, being able to having Matt and Pat leave, which is the same as most other industries have. Games didn't really have that. So we were able to add that so people can spend time with their families, or borrowing on good ideas that other companies have to let people have flexible days off so they can celebrate the holidays they want and not celebrate other stat holidays that they might not want to celebrate. And really looking at the leadership down to say, hey, if your team is doing a big celebration for Canada Day, which some Indigenous people might not want to celebrate, what are you doing for some of the other days that you should be celebrating as a leadership group as well? So just really thinking about that, and smaller things like starting up the Indigenous Game Scholarship at VFS, along with 3 or 4 other local studios. I think it was Blackbird, Microsoft, and Timber, and to provide a full ride scholarship for people to go into that program with equipment, graduate, then get an internship. So you needed all of those pieces, because then people see that, and hopefully other companies copy that idea and do something like that as well. And then there's more representatives, so people can really resonate with the sort of the brand that's doing something.
Yep.
No, and I think that's a huge thing, is about co-opetition, and people copying you is the ultimate flattery. A lot of people say, but in a market that you're in that's so diverse, what do you see as a tipping point for a company to attract more women, and why is there less women gamers? What is the percentage of women gamers, and how do we increase that, and do we want to increase that?
Yeah. I mean, I think you have to, as a former CEO of, it sounds like as a recovering CEO. I know you want to have a diverse company, not only because it's the right thing to do, but because it's the right business thing to do. It's more profitable. 50% of the market that play games are women. 50% of, more than 50% of the purchasers are women. So how are you able to have a product that appeals to them? And the simple answer, but it's also the hardest thing to fix, is if your entire leadership team is all white men, and if your board looks the same, then no matter how good the idea is, it's going to be really hard to drive change, and it's going to be really hard to hire people. And I know even though right now there's sort of a down in the market for tech and games, it will go back up. And the one thing, I also did some stuff a little bit differently. I continue to be the final interview for most of our hires of the thousands of people we hired, because I thought it was really important that I meet people. And most people that are interviewing now are asking questions that they didn't ask 10 years ago. It's really important to really educated and experienced people are asking questions on what are you doing for philanthropy, or why is it important that you support these charities, or I watched your talk, Josh, I want to ask you about this. So they're really interested in the founders and the makeup and your drive and why you're supporting certain diversity. What are your diversity goals? I think it's no longer okay just to say, we'll try to, like, of course, we want to hire somebody diverse for this role, but what are you actually doing for that? And a good example of that is, I was listening to your podcast. Well, I listened to all of them, but I listened to the one with Chief Gibby, and I keep thinking about something he said there where I was hoping somebody to do this, and it's like, you have to do that yourself. You have to step up and do it. If you're going to assign somebody to do something, then you have to be willing to do it yourself. So I think where we are at a higher level in games with diversity, especially diversity across the board, was, say 10 years ago, it was really our goal with our team and our leadership team to have diversity in the industry. And we were focusing on just diversity as a whole. And then we're like, we need to specialize. So we want to focus on women in tech and Indigenous people in business, in games. Mm-hmm. And I was like, let's heads down, make good games. A bunch of people were like, let's do this. And then 5 years later, nobody did that. But that's on me, because I didn't do anything either. So when I was talking to my team about that, I was like, we're always doing these talks and no one's showing up, or the same people are showing up and they say they're going to do it and nobody does that. And then my team said to me, well, you're not doing anything. It's like, yeah, you're right. So I think to change diversity, especially from tech companies, your strategy as a CEO, as C-level, and from your board and from your director level has to be, what are we doing today to bring on people to mentor them? So when we have this conversation in 5 years, how many people have you mentored? How many people have you brought in? Because it takes you 10,000 hours to master something. It takes you lots of years to learn if you even really want to be a manager or a director or a CEO or an entrepreneur. It takes you a lot of times to practice and to figure that out. So you need that mentorship. You really need to see if that's what you want to do. And if we're not starting today, then 5-10 years down the road, we're going to be in the same situation where we're putting that last paragraph on every single application is, we want to hire women and Indigenous people, and we want to be diverse. If you're experienced, please apply. But I see that as just as not even a first step. It's just a compliance thing, and it's not good enough anymore.
Yeah, something you put on your website, right? What are you actually doing, right? Cool. So what are you actually doing about it? Let's hear a little bit about Maskwa, and I mean, you're involved in so many different levels of boards and associations?
Yeah, I'm on the board at BC Tech. It's been great. Just started leading up the Indigenous Leaders Seed Council. So anyone that's in tech, we are able to talk amongst ourselves, and then also be able to talk to other leaders in BC and work together to try to help each other's businesses. It's pretty amazing. Then with Maskwa, I really wanted to get a job in investing and helping Indigenous businesses, but not so much on writing the check, but helping them out, to be their first board member, to be their first sounding board, to be the first person that can kind of guide them along. Because what I saw for a lot of that in angel investing is people are looking to raise money, but they're really solving an authentic problem that the most people that are giving out money, probably that problem, it doesn't happen to them. So by the time you get your money by the time you get your product to the stage where you have to raise more money or a seed round or Series A or get another investor, there's so many of those same voices that are on those boards that have kind of vanillaized your product. Mm-hmm. And then you're just competing with a bunch of other products, but you're a less version of that product. So my thesis, mm-hmm. I can't say theory, I have to say thesis because I'm an investor now. So my thesis is that I can also be sort of that person that hopefully will invest in people that normally wouldn't think about getting invested in. And I was very careful with the casual nature that we treat Maskwa, all the way up to the coaching part of it, all the way up to what our logo looks like. Because I really wanted that logo to stand out in a sea of corporate logos, and somebody to see that and say, Maskwa, they have to be an Indigenous company. Let's go talk to them. So I got this great Cree artist called Harley Knife to make it, and I'm really happy with it. And yeah, we just made our first investment. We're looking at doing 2 or 3 more. And the biggest lesson there is, when I was with a team, I was always like, we need to move faster. We need to do this. And then I realized, hey, maybe it's me, because it's just me now. And I'm like, wow, we're not moving fast enough.
Right. Well, it's so interesting because previously we had the amazing Bobby Reset on the show. And her advice at the end of the show was, don't let the investors, the VCs, tell you who you are, right? You are you. She said that, because she was Indigenous and LGBTQ, that they said, well, why are you promoting that? That's not what it is. And she said, no, because I'm going to promote that, because that's who I am. And she says that's part of her success.
That's part of her story. And she said that she was turned down by 170 investors before somebody gave mm-hmm. her the opportunity to mm-hmm. say yes. And that's by being true to yourself. And back in the day, because we're all around the same age, I'm the elder here because I'm 54. But we never put on our resume, Gina Jackson, Seashell Nation member, Indigenous woman, what have you, when we were giving out resumes back in the day. And now it's so important to be proud of who you are, because it's advantageous to you going out into the market, because there are minorities, or quote minorities, within businesses that want to hire women, that want to hire and Indigenous members, whether it be First Nations, Métis, Inuit, or as identified as. How important is it? Because I know we were talking about ECDev, and my background is economic development, and you mentioned something about tech dev. And what does that mean? Because I think it's really important for Indigenous communities and organizations to know that the future of communicating with members, right now it's on a Facebook platform, podcasting, meetings, or putting meetings on Zoom or what have you. But what is your definition of tech dev?
Yeah, I just made it up. So
okay, well, I liked it.
New word. Yeah,
I like it.
I'll have the T-shirt soon. You can buy them on my website.
You heard it here first.
Yeah. It's been one of the things is, when you work at a job for a really long time, you're so drilled down into making games and knowing that ecosystem. When you zoom back out, you realize at first you think it's going to be amazing and I'm going to get 400 job offers and I'm the best at what I do. And then you go through a period to be like, I know nothing. I have to figure out like where I can contribute to the world. And I really thank you for this podcast, because I think when I get asked questions, where should I start? I said, listen to all these episodes first, then let's talk, because it's really been like the first time I listened to this podcast, and watched Bear's Lair, I had to pause it because I was just so choked up. It's really amazing.
Oh, thank you.
So I really think we have to start thinking at private business, our corporate business, governments, Indigenous organizations, on how we're going to invest in tech. So I think we're doing it. I'm amazed at going to these events for the first time and not knowing these other worlds and these other businesses, all the cool stuff we're doing, all the industry we're building, all the world-class Indigenous entrepreneurs are out there. But being a tech entrepreneur is kind of lonely, because it's all money you put in yourself, or you're building sort of the same way everyone else is building. So I'm really trying to think about how we could not only think about investing in tech in our future, because everything's going to be tech, and especially games and interactive media. And, that accounts for 5.5 billion of Canada's GDP in 2021, and it's probably about another 25% higher than that now. So how are we making sure that we are doing two things, not only participating, being at those tables, being at those boardrooms, being leaders in those companies, and then number two, investing in it. So in the future, that becomes a sustainable business for it. I live on Brard Street, run all the time along the seawall. And it's so amazing to see those new Squamish Nation towers rising up, and thinking about not only what this is going to look like when it's done, but how that's just like almost like a huge symbol of how that's going to be money to power future things in the future for that nation. So let's think about that for tech as well, about how fast these valuations are coming for tech, and how big we can make for how big we can grow these companies. So I'm going to do my small part with Maskwa, but I'm hoping I'll learn enough at that I can help out other organizations to not only grow those businesses and create thousands and thousands of this green, non-extracting jobs for people, all over Canada, but also how we can train youth and retrain people to go for it. Like a big part of tech. Oh, I can say my line now because I'm not wearing a collared shirt. A big part of, I always say tech is the new no-collar jobs. So we should be thinking of tech like trades. And it takes you a lot of time to get your red seal. But then when you do, you're always going to have a job. And these are also the jobs working from home, for the most part, that we can retrain people on, we can get youth involved in, and that we can reach. You can literally reach and build for millions of people on the distributed platforms we have now. So I'm hoping to help some companies figure that out and to get there.
Oh yeah, we would love to talk to you more about that and implementing that into the youth camps, right? We're going around Canada to nations on a weekly basis, and the kids, right? All you have to do is put the idea in their head. Their question, they're 11 to 18, and you ask them what they want to do. They really don't know the first day, but when you say you can do anything, the wheels really start turning in their minds, and it's inspirational to watch, and they flourish over days. And I'm certain if you put that specifically tech in front of them, and that, listen, you can stay home, right? And if you want to, and and still live in your culture and in your community, and get paid well for it. And
there's so many different opportunities too. Gaming, I mean, for a 12 and a 13-year-old, our kids is super sexy, but it's media, it's language revitalization within your community.
Mm-hmm.
It's spreading the word, whether it's for political means or just spreading programs that are going on within your community. It's Indigenous relations. It's staying home, but it also, when you have those that education, you can go work anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
As well, and remotely, and stay in your community or go traveling anywhere in the world, much like hospitality. It's something that you can do remotely as well. So there's great opportunities. And how do, if people want to get a hold of you or are interested in the tech field, how do they get a hold of you? How can they find out more information if you're thinking of this and you're looking for an investment? You're looking to put your company forward, and with somebody that's Indigenous, that has the same core values, that is so well educated like yourself, and wants to do the right thing.
Yeah. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me there. That's probably the best place to connect with me. We also have if it's a tech business, we also have Indigenous Tech Circle. There's a whole bunch of people involved. I think you're in that circle, and 170 people there. We started with like 4. So it's just a good community. So reach out and ask. And, my biggest advice for people that are wanting to learn more is it's pretty natural to just, we've never lived in a time where you could actually reach people and ask a question, and asking a thoughtful question is never a bad idea, because you might get a no, but not asking it, you're not going to get anything. And I used to always think, I think I told you this over lunch, I just always assumed that, I never really wanted to be a leader, but what happened was nobody else was doing it. They needed somebody to do it. So I did it, and I was going to step away from it. And I used to also think that I was just a horrible leader because I'm not like what you read in books or what you see on TV or what some of the kind of tech bro leaders are like, loud and demanding and what you want to do. And then when I was at a Metis retreat, an elder, Pat Eklund, pulled me aside and just said, this is your path. I used to say I'm on 2 paths because I have, my Metis side, and I have my seller side, and I'm trying to figure out which path to take. She said, you only have one path. That's your path. That's what you got to take. And I always just think about it's, you already know what you're going to do because you've been around, how you're raised, who you grew up with, what business is, and it's pretty simple. So you just kind of got to boil that down and think about what's the most logical thing to do, what's the right thing to do, and that's usually the thing you have to do. There's a Michif word, Kawichi Hatoyak, which means we take care of each other. So I just always try to run those through that lens to really think about it's a lot like the Bears Lair show. That's why I love it. It's everyone working together, but there's not like a side cut to be like, I'm sabotaging their business with this thought. Instead, it's like a coach that's coaching them, and everyone feels like everyone wins. The viewers feel like they win. And it's like, this is great. We have these new businesses. How can I support them? Where can I look for it? I'm Googling all the businesses at the end of everything to see where Sage Sisters is. I got to go check it out. And so, just reach out and ask questions. And when you get successful, or whatever you determine successful is, it's on you to also share and give back and do it all again.
I love it. And I think the takeaway is, if you have a great idea, and one of the many takeaways, but if you have a great idea and no one else is doing it, just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it.
I love the way you look at life and entrepreneurship, and, really foster it towards Indigenous people or underserved people. It's amazing. So thank you.
Yeah. When we hold each other up, we all succeed.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for being with us today. It's been a great conversation, and all the best. I know our friendship is going to be lasting a lifetime, and just can't wait to see your next journey.
Yes. And I have to go to your website to get a hoodie and a hat. That is an awesome logo.
I'll hook you up.
All right. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in to Beyond the Lair. It's been a pleasure, Joshua Nilson. Thanks for listening to Beyond the Lair. Please follow us, download this episode, and follow us on social media on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and TikTok.